Hello and welcome to Power Skills with Janna. I'm Janna Jones, your leadership development specialist, coach, and mentor, here to help you unlock the most powerful skills in your leadership toolkit. Today, we are tackling a subject that is rarely discussed due to the emotionally challenging nature of it. But as the market shifts and those changes occur, I wanted to take the opportunity to put something out there to hopefully support those that are going through a tough time or situation, also their team, their peers, and leaders in the organization, navigating some of the toughest conversations to surface. Because whether you're facing redundancy yourself, supporting someone else through it, or navigating the process as a leader, the way that we handle redundancy defines much more than our careers. It shapes our character, resilience, and relationships. So, in this episode, we're going to dive into how to process redundancy when it happens to you, how leaders can approach redundancy with empathy and transparency, peers can do to support their colleagues as well during such transitions. By the end of our time together, I hope to give you some actionable steps, meaningful perspectives, and tools to face redundancy with empathy, resilience, and of course, growth. So let's start with the personal impact because redundancy is a deeply personal experience. Even if it's not a reflection of your skills or value, it can still feel like a rejection. So if you ever find yourself navigating this space, here are some things to keep in mind. Separate the redundancy from your own identity. Understand this. Redundancy does not define your worth or your capabilities. Often, redundancy is a business decision tied to external factors like cash flow, systems changes, restructuring, or budget cuts. It's okay that it doesn't feel okay. Take the time to process the emotions that come with it, whether it's sadness, frustration, or fear. Journaling, talking to a trusted friend, or seeking professional guidance can really help in this situation as well. Many organizations have employee support programs that are of so much value, but often underutilized in our desire to just push through or to get on with it. My mother taught me that shared joy is doubled while shared sorrow is halved. So sometimes it can be really valuable to speak to someone outside of our family and our immediate network, and there is no shame in that at all. It's actually an incredible strength to know when you need that support. Then understanding the logistics, clarifying the terms of the redundancy, whether that's severance packages, benefits, or any support services like career counseling provided by your employer. Review your own financial situation and strive to make a plan to stabilize yourself in the short term. Lean into self-reflection. There is no need at this point to make hasty, emotive decisions. Perhaps there's an opportunity to pause and reevaluate, asking yourself, what is it that I truly want for my career? What are my intrinsic motivations? Are there skills that I've been really wanting to develop, but I haven't had time for that yet? Are there industries or roles that align more closely with your values? Evaluate your career goals here. Are there areas that you've always wanted to explore, perhaps? Treat this moment as a pivot point to really align your career with your own aspirations. And then take practical steps for your career transition, whether that's upskilling and reskilling. Platforms like LinkedIn Learning or Coursera can really help build your current expertise or help you to branch out into new areas that are of interest to you. Expand your network. Reach out to former colleagues, mentors, industry groups. Let people know that you're exploring your next opportunity. Most opportunities arise from relationships rather than applications alone. And that sense of community connection can also be so incredibly valuable in building your self-confidence and assuredness of your value as you start to progress to interviews. Seek out support. Talent and recruitment agencies, career coaches, outplacement services, and even local job boards can really help you to navigate the market. And of course, managing your mindset is key. Perhaps most importantly, redundancy can foster a loop of negative self-talk. Combat this by practicing affirmations, staying physically active, and keep dedicating time to hobbies or interests, the things that make you uniquely you. These actions will keep your mind focused on what is within your control and positive during what can feel like a particularly tough and uncertain time. Redundancy is also one of the most difficult challenges a leader can face. It's not just about delivering the hard news, it's about doing it with humanity and ensuring that trust and connection within the remaining team is also preserved. I like to keep something like the 4 C's model in the back of my mind. The 4 C's being clarity, compassion, communication, and care. For tricky situations such as these, it can be incredibly helpful as it makes me reconnect and ensure that my communication is focused on the important stuff. Communicate with transparency. Your team deserves clarity about the why behind any redundancy decisions. Of course, there's going to be confidential aspects, but providing as much context as you can helps people to understand that the decision is about the business, not about the individual. People are not getting fired. Redundancy is very different and connected to the role. Coming back to that may be key. Approach these conversations with empathy. The way that you deliver the news matters as much as the news itself. Some tips for these difficult conversations: make sure you're holding them in a quiet and private space. Use really compassionate language. This decision was incredibly difficult, and I want to emphasize that it is in no way a reflection of your contributions. We're incredibly thankful for the contributions that you've made to this team. Be prepared for emotional responses, giving the individual time to process and follow up later to check in if that's really helpful. It's okay that they're not going to be okay, and consider the support that they might need and how you can make that available to them. Know that while you may have to put the effort in to communicate in a certain way and be as compassionate as is humanly possible, they may not have the listening for that at the time. The emotional response can take away access to the rational part of the brain. Keep being compassionate anyway, reaching out and checking in. Provide resources and support. If your organization offers severance packages, outplacement services, mental health support, make sure you communicate these options very clearly. For many people, the what's next is the hardest part of redundancy. As I mentioned, when the emotional response hits, this can be a very tough thing to get through. So consider having the logistics laid out in writing so that the person can reflect on that and process it in their own time as needed. Invite their further questions and clarification at a time that works for them as well. Build trust with remaining team members. After redundancy announcements, remaining employees may feel just as uncertain or even demoralized. Rebuilding trust is key, and we can do that by being really honest about the state of the organization, so far as reasonably practical, of course. Invite questions and feedback that they might have. Those being made redundant are unlikely to be the only ones with an emotive response in this situation. Often people will look around and wonder how on earth they will get the same work done with the limited resources in the team now. It can be just as daunting, and a form of survivor's guilt can also kick in certain situations. Recognize the contributions of those who have left. Thank them. Acknowledge their efforts and how much they meant to the team, the impact they had, the contribution that they made, in a way that's most appropriate for you and your team. It's always a tough morning tea, but it's also so important for everyone to see that individual contributions are valued and recognized. Then, refocusing on team cohesion and morale with regular check-ins and support is incredibly valuable for those who are still in the team. It's also incredibly tough as that peer or colleague. So when someone on your team is made redundant, it can be a confusing time for everyone. You might wonder, what's the right thing to say? How do I help without overstepping? You might start by acknowledging the situation. Don't ignore it. A simple acknowledgement like, I was so very sorry to hear about this. How are you doing? This can make someone feel seen. Offer genuine support. If appropriate, offer to support them. Often at this time, people appreciate things like recommendations on LinkedIn, connections with someone in your network, or a reference for future roles. Small gestures like these can make a really big difference. Respect their boundaries. So important, because some people may not want to talk about their situation. Others will. Check in and offer support regardless of your own preference, and allow your support to be guided by their responses and their needs. Following their lead and respecting their needs is absolutely the most important thing. And release any guilt. Those left in the team after redundancy may feel some sense of guilt, especially where they're close to the individual or perhaps know of a challenging external situation for the other person that makes them feel worse about their job loss. For example, family or financial obligations, which are challenging. There's a level of survivor's guilt that may be not sitting so well with you. Consider talking to someone so that you can let it go, as unfortunately, while empathy is an incredibly strong leadership trait and we don't want to lose that, feeling hurt or guilty for them is not helpful to the situation, nor to the individual leaving either. While redundancy can feel like the end of the road, it can often open new doors and new possibilities. Many people find much more fulfilling careers after redundancy because it forces them to reassess what it is that they truly want. Others will utilize the opportunity to start businesses or side hustles, elevating those things, pursuing further education, or even taking a much needed break to recharge and reset. Redundancy is most certainly not the end of your story. It is simply a new chapter that's entirely yours to write and can set the stage for an even brighter future. Consider, how can this opportunity become a stepping stone for your next opportunity? Whether you're experiencing redundancy firsthand, navigating it as a leader, or supporting someone through it, how you handle this challenge defines the tone for what comes next. If you've been affected by redundancy, remember, you are not redundant. You are resilient, talented, and more than capable of growth. Utilize this time to refocus on what is within your control, rediscover your purpose, and create the next chapter with intention. Leaders, your compassion and transparency can make all the difference for your team during these times. And peers, never underestimate the power of small gestures. They can create ripples of encouragement and connection. Start by asking the person how they are and waiting for the answer. Holding space for the needs of others in a tough time is so incredibly important. Thank you for taking the time to join me on Power Skills with Janna for this important conversation. If this episode resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who might benefit. You can always reach me via Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Power Skills Development, or visit www.powerskillsdevelopment.com if you'd like to accelerate your leadership potential. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and your reviews help more people to discover the show, so please don't hesitate to connect. Wherever you are, stay safe, stay curious, and keep growing. Enjoy the rest of your week.